Hello and welcome to our last webinar in this series. And today we are going to talk a little bit about how to create value through value chain transparency and how that can be a catalyst for business value. With me today, I have Signe, who I'm pleased to welcome, and she will talk a little bit about how you have achieved some value through value chain transparency. If you have any questions, please share them along the way. We'll try to answer them right after you make the question. Otherwise, we'll do it at the end. So just a quick walkthrough of the agenda today. Quick introduction to Signe and me. Then we'll go into an introduction to value chain transparency and why it is a differentiator, at least for a little bit yet. Then I'll hand over to Signe to talk about the journey of Roccamore, and then we'll close up with how to get started and some of the key questions you can ask yourself before starting. So a quick introduction, Signe, maybe you will start?
Yes, so I'm a director of design and product development at Roccamore, and I've been working in the fashion industry for more than 20 years, and I have a quite broad experience within both product development and production, as well as design.
And I'm Nikolaj. I'm part of our digital strategy and transformation team. Been working for almost a decade with using technology to digitize various companies across industries. So what is value chain transparency and why is it becoming a differentiator? Right now it's becoming a differentiator, and Signe will talk a little bit more about that later on, but it is basically the end-to-end visibility and disclosure of information across all the activities that you have in your value chain. So it is a differentiator, at least for now, because many companies don't provide that information. So if you're able to provide information outside of the normal product information, you're actually able to create some additional value for your customers or even for yourself as a company. So if we look on the right side, we can see some of the benefits. So if we're talking about enhanced trust and credibility, extremely important in today's market. We see a lot of companies actually being more and more transparent, providing more and more information for the consumers because they have a higher demand from the end customers. We also talk about proactive risk management. So you're able to actively address some of the risks that you occur in your supply chain or in your value chain. So you're able to proactively act on that and maybe change the supplier, find a new ways of doing work. That also talks a little bit about the operational excellence, where we have a better data exchange, we have more interoperability across the value chain, so we have a closer connection to your suppliers. Again, strengthen supplier relationships and collaboration. If we have this unity form of doing work in our entire value chain, we have a better and more informed decision making in the way. So not only the consumers, but also you as a company will be able to make decisions based on data rather than assumptions. Lastly, we have supporting regulatory compliance. I know a lot of you are heavily engaged in the ESG and reporting part of it. And here you actually get a way of having the full transparency of your value chain and be able to ensure the regulatory compliance while also getting business value. So if we move on to how it is today. Today, normally what we see is, as a consumer, you have four different areas that you get information of. You have the location of a manufacturer, you have the brand name, you have a retail price, and then you have the care instructions. And that's more or less it. So that imposes some business challenges. So you don't have any information of the origin of the material. You might be prone to counterfeit. You might experience regulatory compliance information is missing or at least difficult to obtain. And then you have a difficult turning regulatory compliance into business value. So what we would like to do with value chain transparency is actually build additional steps into your product information. So now, or tomorrow, you will be able to provide this information for your customers and be able to make data-driven decisions internally, but also enable your customers to make better decisions based on your information. So if we walk through some of them, we also see some of the S part of the ESG. So we have details of working conditions. We also have something about the supplier information, the repair history, which really talks into the circular economy part of it, the recycle information. How do we recycle products after end of life? We have the source of origin, which actually is a way to go all the way to the source to get this information about the product. So with this information, you have the proof of origin. You address the counterfeit part with proof of authenticity. So it is your product that I'm actually buying. Regulatory compliance is ensured by transparency. And traceability for value chain transparency is a way to actually get this information to be able to optimize or to be able to be a differentiator as it is right now. So the driver for implementing a digital product passport or achieving value chain transparency is can be many things. And it can be legislation. As we know, ESPR is coming up with legislation coming into force in the next couple of years, where we actually are demanding that the companies are building digital product passports for their products. It can also be innovation. We want to be at the forefront of this. We want to be able to provide something for our customers. The demand that we talked about a little bit earlier, we see a shift in the generation where we demand more and more sustainable solutions. We demand that the companies that we buy our products from have some kind of transparency or visibility of the products that they produce. And then the vision and mission. And I think that is a great handover to you, Signe, because that is basically what has been the driver for you. And that can also be a driver for actually starting to implement this. But I think I'll just hand over to you, Signe, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about your journey.
Yes. So first of all, I'm from Roccamore and we make shoes. And you can ask, what does that have to do with transparency, traceability, circular economy? But we have, from the very start, we've been very mission-driven and also a lot of with innovation. So what we do every day is that we turn around the idea or the question, and we see if we can start from the opposite side. And that gives a lot of new ideas and wins and fun ways to do things in a different way. So the why of Roccamore, what we have done is that both Frederikke, the founder that you can see in the picture, and I, we have known each other for many years and worked together. And Frederikke, at some point, she really had back pains and she really wanted to wear high heels without having problems. So what she did was to develop this orthopedic insole in a high heel shoe. And she did this with orthopedics and really skilled staff. So what we did was to scale that up. So it's kind of the idea of making a sneaker on a high heel, but with comfort. So you can actually sustain your weight, but also get the comfort. So this is what we have worked with, and it's a continuous innovation on how to do well and how to get a wonderful comfort and how to do a product that's an innovation and keep on working on that innovation to get better. So our mission is to support women and men in being who they are, and millions of brands will try to convince you that you need to change just one more thing to be perfect. And we believe that you're always perfect, and the power lies in standing up for who you are, and that, you know, a pair of high heels can help with that, because you have a different confidence if you stand well and you feel stronger. So we believe it's easier to have the high heels on, and so you can stay strong every day. And this is a picture that I have taken because innovation is difficult. You meet a lot of obstacles along the way. This is Antonio that I have worked with for many years. He just went into pension last year, and we sent him a wonderful present. But we have worked with him for all the time that Roccamore has since the very beginning. And in the beginning, he was very difficult. He said, no, you cannot do orthopedic insole in a high heel pump or a boot. That's impossible. So we had to work with him. And the other man that stands on the picture is Franco. He's another man with 40 years of experience. And they were, no, you cannot do this. And we said, can you please try? So in the beginning, maybe we had to make 7 or 8 tests to actually get something that was comfortable or fit, even just fit, because they had to change all the curves, all the volumes. They had to do something completely new, which they've never done before. So innovation can be hard, but it's definitely worthwhile. So this is a manufacturer of heels. This is where we go and develop our heels. We also get inspired by the whole archive. It's just a picture to show that shoes are very complex. We have around 35 components in each shoe. It's a lot of work to actually get a transparent supply chain. It's actually a lot of work to get all the components to fit together and go well and be compliant. So apart from the design and the whole industrialization of the product, there's a whole different thing where you have to work with many, many suppliers. And this is Tackificio, because every component factory in Italy is called something with officio, which is office. So it's kind of, so the same with the last factory is called formificio. So you have all these different places that has something with office. When I moved to Denmark, I've been in Denmark for 5 years. I've lived most of my career in Italy or in London or even Germany and France. But when I went back to Denmark after many years in the industry in Tuscany near the tanneries, I thought there must be a tannery in Denmark. And so there is, Skanheid. So I actually, by chance, met Michael, which had just become CEO for Skanheid in Denmark. And we had a talk, and he had also just came from a job in Italy. And we said, couldn't it be amazing if we could turn the bucket around and just start with the raw material? And only the raw material, and not that I just go to a supplier and ask for a meter article. And he said, that's great. That's a great idea. I can supply you the data for that. So that's how we started the cow to the shoe. So we gave this, he gave me a wonderful thing. He could make the data set for each height we had. And that made it possible for us to do a really good storytelling. And that's also what this transparency enables. It enables that you can actually tell a story, but it also gives you knowledge and you learn from it. So we still work with Skanheid, and from that initial idea, actually Skanheid created a company that's called Spor today, and they were just nominated for the H&M Foundation Award for being a very innovative project for transparency and how to lower the CO2 emissions. So we still work, and we have worked with blockchain, and now we have a QR code and sort of a prototype for digital product passport that we would like to roll out to all our products. But we have now done it for 4 years, and we're continuing it, and we try to improve it as we go along. This is just a view of the traceable collection. In total, it's 65 SKUs, so it's quite a lot. This is just a picture. So we have a strategy that says that we would like, this year our strategy is to 40% to be traceable collection. And it's because we find it amazing that it's both Danish cows. We can secure the data. It also means that we can go back to the farm. We can see when was the animal born, when was it slaughtered in the abattoir, and we have the whole storytelling. And we like that also because we can give that transparency to the customer. So what do we want to achieve by this? Well, it's, for example, that I'm here today is a little bit of this butterfly effect. We do, it's the fact that a butterfly waves its wings and it leads to a small ring of change. And that little ring of change gives an effect out around in the world. So that's what we like. We like to give these small pieces of change in our everyday communication with the customer, but also all the people that we meet in our daily life. So that's why we want to give the customer transparency, to give them a possibility to evaluate what product is it that I'm buying. So the question is, what can you gain from transparency? I think one of the biggest gains we have had is the storytelling, because we've had a possibility to engage with our customers, to send them email flows about all the wonderful things that we can do. We actually have gone to visit some of the farmers and see the cows and see that they actually have a really good life and that the animal welfare is compliant. So we can actually go ourselves and visit. So we do that a couple of times a year. And it's something that engages both us and the management, but it also engages the employees to know that we have these set of values and that they can participate, for example, in a visit to a farmer. So then there is the trust and the increased business. I think we have a huge trust from our customers because we have this transparency. So they can actually go in and look if they want to have more data. So we can see that there is actually, in the beginning, it was only around 12% that looked more into it, but it's slowly going up. So now we are around 20%. You can say that's not a lot, but today with customers going around on websites like very fast, and it's very difficult to get their attention and to keep them on a landing page, it's actually a really good result when we compare ourselves to other companies. And I think that's what it's about, that you have to find your place in the market and you have to keep it, and you have to also make the customer see some of the things you do, because sometimes we forget to tell the customer. And then there's the compliance part. We have learned a lot in the compliance, and we have, because we know our materials, we also know that some of them are amazing materials. And then you get compliance on the way from this. So I think it can give a huge engagement from the customers, but also from the suppliers, that you actually have the direct contact with your raw material supplier, with your tannery. Yesterday, Jutta, that makes all our colors in Germany, she called me, she had a problem, and normally I wouldn't have a call from her. I would just have a call from the factory, but because I know her and I go there every year to visit her, she calls me directly when there's a problem. So it saves time. Now the problem is already solved. Last night we already solved it. So it creates a benefit in time that you have the direct contact to each partner in your supply chain. So this is an image of the data we get from Scanhide, from Spor that supplies the data. They're the data industry that supplies all the data. So for an article, a boot, let's say we have, this is the data for this shoe. It was, you can cut around 15 pairs of shoes for each height. So maybe this is a production of 200 pairs. And then we actually get the data for each height. And then you can see where does it come from in Denmark, when was it slaughtered, and how old was it, and in which abattoir was it slaughtered. So all of this is the data, and the customer has the possibility to access this data among other data by scanning the QR code with their phone. So this is a picture of Carsten, which is one of the farmers that we went to visit, because at a certain point I could see that his farm often came up. So I contacted Birgitte from Spor and I said, could we make a visit? So this was one of our first visit. And then we went as a company to visit him, do pictures and make him tell about what does he do, what is his work. And it was amazing to see how much he cared for his animals and for their welfare, and how proud he was that we came to visit him and that we actually are interested in what he does in his part of the chain. And we have the traceability with Sport. We partnered with them in 2021, so it's quite some time now. And all the cattle is from Denmark, and now we have worked with them for a long time. So it gives us opportunities, for example, to say, I would like to do a free-range cow collection. So I'm working on that concept, because that means that actually we would be CO2 neutral from the very beginning when it's free-range cows. And you can have all the data for that as well. So it means that we can have a benefit, both the farmer that can tell their story and us, because we can go in CO2 neutrality directly with the material. And for hides normally sourced globally, for the sheep and goat hides, we don't have the data because the industry doesn't provide that. Actually, it's quite unique that in Denmark we have this data set, and because we have the ear tags with the data. So that's quite unique. And in general, also very big companies, they don't have the data set back to the farmer. They have it back to the abattoir, and that's it. So it's quite unique what we do, because then we can secure the animal welfare also and actually be able to document it. So the hides from ScanHide, they each have a number, and that's how we link up the whole traceability. And I'm working on now to make it for shoe. So our goal and strategy is that we would like to roll it out so we can have a full data set for each shoe. When we work with partners, not only ScanHide, but in general, we work with them strategically. So we like to partner with high standards. So Leather Working Group is a non-profit organization that secures that the stakeholders in the leather industry is certified in different parameters. So we work with them apart from also doing our own certification. And it makes us, give trust to the suppliers because of all the compliance they have to go through. And the traceability is, I just talked about Jutta. Basically, Richard Hoffmann's is a very old German tannery, but because I visit them and now know Jutta and her two sons, then I have a possibility to create new materials to improve the process. We have developed a material together that we will roll out later this year, which is a completely new tanning, mineral tanning. So it gives the possibility to be very, have the innovations with the company, with the best partner companies. And lastly, in this digital passport that you can access, this is kind of a prototype, and it's a landing page. Then we collaborate with 3 Italian shoe factories, and they're all well known for their craftsmanship and quality. And what we do is that we show the area. We don't show directly the shoe suppliers because that's delicate information, but we show and showcase the craftsmanship. So these are pictures from one of the factories working the shoe. And yes, so last but not least, we have our own quality control, and every pair is controlled before they go out of production. and they are sent to our warehouse in Denmark. So we have we have a very high standard for the quality, but also because we use more natural materials, we also have a different set of parameters for quality. Some of these Danish hides, they actually have signs on them because they are natural letters. It's actually an animal that had a life. So we have a different parameter of quality control, and also to secure and that these are defects that are actually quality and not a bad thing. So in general, we work a lot to give a good service, and our mission is to create an experience to the customer, and the traceable collection is part of giving an experience to our customer. It's really about engaging the customer and giving a storytelling that they can rely on and trust. So we also have the Vegetable Tan collection, which is also certified cradle to cradle. We have worked on this certification. We just recertified it. It's taking us 1.5 years to certify this and also the traceable collection. And it's a lot of compliance. It's a lot of strategic things you need to work on as a management team and as a company as a whole. And we do that in order to create a sustainable product for the future, a product that can be upcycled, a product that can be used for a long time. You have many questions when you do a product. I guess in every industry, you have many questions. And whether you're a designer, a product developer, or you take care of the production, many things and questions will arise in these times. So I had, even if I have a lot of technical knowledge, I had a problem with figuring out what kind of chemistry is good. How can I take that decision? I'm not an engineer, I'm not a chemist. How can I actually make an evaluation on what is the better choice? And the same with the design, when we say eco-design, design for future, design for circular economy, design for something that has to be recycled or upcycled. How can I, as a normal professional, know which material is the right one? So we started to do the cradle-to-cradle certification in order to get help on these questions and in order to have a strategic offset that could kind of pull us ahead. And we use that in our work. I don't know if you know the cradle-to-cradle global standard, but it's used globally by many companies like B&O, even Novo Nordisk has made some certifications, a lot of different, the building industry. So it's focused on future design and also how to make safe, circular choices and how to create a value chain that can optimize the processes and the materials. So the transition to circular economy is very complex, and you need a lot of innovation and collaboration between the actors and all the suppliers in the whole chain. And this is part of what we do with the certification. So we have this Vegetable Tan collection that's 10%, that's certified already. And then we have the traceable collection, which will be certified, hopefully finished in January next year. We have applied 1.5 months ago. So this will take us up to around 50% of all our products that are certified.
And is this certification part of when you do these strategic engagements with your suppliers? Is it a requirement from your side that you actually that they're able to provide that information to you?
It is a requirement, and we have also changed suppliers that were not able to comply. We have discovered in our certification several components that were not compliant, not only to this certification, but also actually to the REACH directive in Europe. So if we had not gone on the road to certify, we would have never known that this was the case. And even some of the suppliers, they don't know when they have a material that's not compliant, because they have sub-suppliers. They have a tier 2, 3, 4. A very good example is the insole in our shoe that actually, I thought it was 2 materials, but it's actually 5 materials. And when we dug into it the first time, we saw that there was a latex that was not compliant. And so it gave me the idea to develop a whole new material together with them. And actually, it became a business opportunity for them because they developed a whole new green material made with natural caoutchouc, which they have then sold, and algae. They have then sold it to all their other customers, like Versace and Prada and everything, because then they could be compliant. We had already done the work with the certification and discovered this material. So I think there's a lot of wins to be found in making the certification.
The butterfly effect.
The butterfly effect, yes. So this is just a picture of Sarah Santori. We open up that what tannery we work with, because we think it's such an amazing work they do. So everybody should know that this is an amazing supplier, that they can use this material if they want to. I think in order to make a better world, we have to share the good findings we find on our way in order to make the process go smoother and faster, and the transition we are in. So this is just an example of the traceable collection of the bill of materials that we worked with. As you can see, it's a lot of data and very complex. The cool thing is that we'll have a product passport when we get the certification for all these products, and we'll know that they're compliant because we've worked on it for 1.5 years. And we will also know that we have amazing materials that we can actually share with our customers. And we have a lot of wins on the way, because when you open up the supply chain and you know all the tiers, I have had to take different company owners out for lunch or dinner. There is Graziano, which he really didn't want to work on anything, and I couldn't find an alternative supplier. So I said, listen up, I will offer you a very nice dinner in Florence in this fancy restaurant. He's a very man that loves food. You can see it when you meet him. So I said, I'm going to offer you the best dinner in Florence. And he said, okay. And until then, I had called him every second week and tried to convince him. There was nothing to do. But after that dinner, I was able to, he said, okay, let's look at the materials, let's look at the compliance, and I will work together. I will give you a hand. And now when I go to Tuscany, we always have a wonderful lunch and a glass of wine. And actually, we work a lot. And we, even if he's just a tiny part of the component of a shoe, we now exchange a lot of different knowledge, and we help each other along the way, even if it has nothing to do with Roccamore. But it's just a good contact, and we managed to create a whole new material that he also can sell. So there is a lot of wins, and I get a really good price because I didn't have any raises for 2 years on his components, which is also a win.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Signe. And you really talk into some of the benefits that we showed earlier of strengthening the collaboration with your suppliers and having this storytelling as the primary goal and primary achievement from implementing. I wouldn't say a product passport as in how EU designs it, but you are basically a first mover within this, and that is actually very interesting to see that you are using your business or the value that you want to achieve by having this, and not from a regulatory perspective, because you were way ahead of the regulatory space. But if we just dive a little bit into how to get started. So what we have is a framework for a digital product passport. So you have the strategy for your product passport, and then you have various different strategic considerations to consider. So you have within your business and your value chain, you have something within your technology and data space. Of course, you have the regulation, and then you have the organization and training and the partners at the end. So some of the key questions to ask is, and what we usually see our clients ask is, how can I address my value chain? Should I change my processes? Should I change my product portfolio? We hear that you actually build your product portfolio from scratch, but with this in mind that you have to be cradle to cradle certified. Mm. So then you have to think about your data platform. Do you have to rebuild it? How do you leverage it if it's already there? The regulation will eventually come. So which regulation will apply to your specific products or your company, and what implications will they have? Because that also plays a vital part when you actually have to decide how to build your product passport. Something that is often overseen is if we have the capabilities to drive this implementation internally. And there will be a lot of training, there will be a lot of communication. They'll basically turn around the business models of how you actually provide this information of your products. And lastly, how do I select the right partner or vendor for this? There are tons of different partners and vendors in the market. So that is also something that we help our clients with. Choose the right vendor, choose the right partner for what you actually want to achieve now, but also what you want to achieve in the future. So, and this basically visualize what you said earlier, Signe, that you flip it around so that we actually build the product passport or the value chain and transparency from what is the driver. So that could be legislation, that could be innovation, it could be that you have a vision as a company that you want to be better, want to do the butterfly effect in the market. And then you walk through the funnel where you have to identify your critical products. We see that the EU is already defining product groups. Right now it's at 29 different product groups in the ESPR coming up. And then you have to determine the relevant scope of the value chain and geographical presence. So that you chose specifically, we wanted to be made in Italy and use Germany as well, and so on. And of course, there will be different implications if you have manufacturers around the world that you have to get this information from. But we also see, as Signe said, that the suppliers are also seeing this as a differentiator because they probably compete with thousands of different suppliers of your contract. So if they are able to proactively share this information with you, they have a competitive edge and potentially can gain a bigger market share. And then we move all the way down to derive regulatory requirements and KPIs for reporting and reporting requirements at the end, because in the end, we have to be compliant, of course, but it is the last thing. And if we think about it, when we have all this in place and all this information already from the product passport, we are more than 95% of the way to be compliant with the regulation as well. So that's why we are trying to flip it around, as Signe also said they have done, to have the regulatory compliance in mind, but keeping an eye on the business value. So lastly, we have 3 key decisions as a company that you need to think about when you're embarking on the digital product passport journey. So first of all, you need to think about the scope. You need to think about, are we doing this on a product group level? Are we doing it on a batch level or all the way down to the item level? Goes without saying that if we do it on the item level, it is more detailed, but it will also require much more information and much more data to be implemented across the value chain. So it can be a good idea to start at product group or batch level and then eventually move down to item level. Then we talk about function and value chain. So when you're implementing it at DPP, it requires cross-functional involvement internally. So you have to involve various different departments within your company, as well collaboration across the value chain to fully achieve this end-to-end transparency. As Signe said, this close connection to the suppliers is actually something that provides value for them because it's easier to adjust the smaller things that might be difficult for, especially when you're a smaller company and you don't have like the force of this large company coming in telling, I want this and this and this, but you're actually able through the connection, through the relationship building to change the products that you actually get from the suppliers. So we have to think about the business functions, the value chain stakeholders, and then the tech providers, because in the end, those are the ones building the solution for us. So we have to consider, okay, how do we engage our tech providers into this flow before getting started. The investment case. So, of course, we have to get some kind of return on investment, and that does not necessarily have to be on the financial side. It can be trust, it can be credibility, which is difficult to put a price on, but it is something that holds a high value. And we often talk about data becoming a currency. And in this case, it can actually also be a way of getting new information of your value chain, potentially building new business models. So start out by building this business case for your company, figuring out what makes sense, where does the DPP actually make something for us that we can achieve some value from. Maybe you have some products where it doesn't make sense, or it is way too difficult to actually get the information from the suppliers. Then start with a very simple object or very simple item and work from there. It's quite easy to scale, but it's very difficult to start with something that is highly complex. And then at the end, the partner ecosystem is something where we have to think about, do we only want to build what we are building right now, or do we need to consider the scalability and the cost of scalability in the future? We also need to consider, is it future-proof? So can we build further into this? Can we use AI? Can we use other technologies to actually improve what we are doing right now? Or do we just want to stay where we are with this product to be compliant? Because that is also totally fine. But it is a way of thinking of value chain transparency as a business value and not just compliance. Okay, I think we'll move over to if anyone has any questions. Let's see here.
I can just say something. I think the strategic level of this is quite high, because to make changes, it takes time. Mm-hmm. And then if we have to go to 2030, we really need to get going on how to be compliant with everything for 2030. It may seem far away, but it isn't, because if you have to make the compliance work and work for you, because there's going to be a race with all these companies that have to get their compliance done. So if you start moving sooner rather than later, then you're ahead of the game. And then maybe you also have more strategic wins. And to design for the circular economy is very complex. So you need a lot of planning, and you need a lot of knowledge that you have. It takes time to get that knowledge also in the supply chain, to know all the tiers, to know all the suppliers.
Yeah, we could see it. Was it 1.5 years for you to get the information out of your suppliers? So I could imagine that bigger companies, of course, they also have more people available, but it is something that you just don't do overnight over the weekend, and then on Monday we are up and running. So it is, yes, the regulation might seem far away, and also the 2030 goals, but it is a way of getting started now that you don't have to rush it once the regulation is in place, or when we're nearing the 2030 mark.
Yes, and I also think there are questions when you start the process which are important to ask. For example, what material is the right one if I need to discharge the product and it has to be upcycled? Mm-hmm. It's a difficult question, and in order to understand which are the better solutions, you actually need time, and maybe you need different people to advise you on that.
Mm-hmm. I think we have a question, but I can't seem to. It just said right. Okay, so it doesn't seem like we have any questions. Do you have anything you want to add, Signe?
No. Well, apart from, I think there are many wins in opening up your supply chain, because you discover on the way many hidden gems that can also be, cut out a middleman that you didn't even know that existed. Find the treasure in terms of the material that's actually used in your product is a premium material and you didn't even know. So you have a story to tell. And all these things on the way that you find, I think there's a lot to win. Mm-hmm. Mm.
Yeah, and we see a lot of companies are obligated to report on the ESG right now. Yeah. So all of the information is already gathered more or less, right? So we already have the information in hand. So if we put this into a product passport, we might be able to provide that information also to the customers and not just for the annual reporting or being compliant.
Yeah, and I think that's what will set companies apart for the future, is that if you can engage your customer and do a true storytelling on what your product really is, that's going to make the difference for also how you sell your product. Mm.
Okay. And then we have a question, how we can take specification of material that will be fit for 2030. So if I understand that question, can you maybe elaborate a little bit on what you mean with take specification of material that will be fit for 2030? That will be very helpful. But we can talk a little bit about the 2030 mark, because yes, it seems far away. But we also have a lot of suppliers in our supply chain and value chain that we have to address. And we also need to remember that it's not only upstream, it's also downstream. So we have the full ability to provide this information even before 2030, because I don't think many consumers think about, oh, by 2030, all my clothing and everything else will be providing this information. So it is something where you can actually, as you said, provide this additional value to your customers. And even though they didn't know they wanted it, a lot of people actually value the information, and you can actually interact with your customers in a different way, and you can see the behavior and how they use the product, how they recycle it.
I think you also have to look at the data as a scope for the future. Mm-hmm. It can benefit the customer, but it can also benefit you, because the more data you have for a higher amount of time, the more information you get from that data. So you can have very huge wins, and we start to have that now because we have already been going for 4 years. Mm-hmm. So we get the data and the data sets that it gives us information that we can act on. It can be something how we interact with the customer, or how we take decisions in the production, how we take decisions in the product development. So it takes some time to gather the data, to actually have something to act on and to move on and to move ahead on and to build a new strategy on. So you need a data set that's not just 2 months old. You need a longer data set to be able to gain knowledge and take decisions. So the more data and the further out the data is, the better.
That makes sense. So we also have a question. So how do you ensure correctness of the suppliers' data input from each supplier? So what kind of controls are there of the actual data input? So how do you do that when you receive information from your supplier? So
we have, through the certification of Cradle to Cradle, we have set up data control systems twice a year, where we not only control the FMS, the final manufacturer stage, but we actually control all the sub-suppliers. So we have some that we have identified that we need to do a site visit for. We have some where we have identified that we need to do a test, like a chemical test or something, to ensure that the product is still compliant. We have some where it's about sending an email and saying, can you please confirm that this is still the product? Can you please sign this formula that it's compliant? And that we have a whole set, we have 3 data sets that we basically work with, depending on how high a percentage the component is in our product. Mm-hmm. So basically it's made on that. So we have this compliance that we work with continuously.
So that is a more manual, or what do you say, a structured way of doing it? Yeah. Where we can also take the use of technology. So like we have AI, and you also mentioned that you tested out with blockchain, which are technologies that we can use to actually validate and verify the data along the way automatically without having anyone to interfere. Because I could imagine if you have like thousands and thousands of products, it would be a very comprehensive job to do. So we need to set up some kind of automation to be able to ensure that.
The question about 2030, I think the reason why we chose to do the cradle-to-cradle certification is because it's very complex to know what is needed for 2030 or even just for 2025. So the chemistry and the REACH directive is complex for just a normal professional to go through. So you need some tools to actually and have a third party evaluate the data that's collected and the material and everything. Is that actually compliant with REACH, or is it compliant for the future? And you can make, like, we have a future material bank, and we have strategic goals now on what materials we need to change. A good example for us is that through the certification, we have found out that we cannot have Greece or South Africa for our goat or land leather, because that's not going to be compliant, because then you cannot secure the social welfare, you cannot secure some other things that are really important in terms of also for the product passport or for the compliance. So then we know already now that we need to find a strategic solution for this material to be produced elsewhere in Europe. So Greece is not, I had thought I had solved it 2 years ago, moving the production to Greece, but I haven't, because it's not going to be compliant. So that's a good example of that. Now I know I have some years like 3 years to find solutions, do tests, and it's a big material for us. So I need the time to do tests and find the right price and everything.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then we have a question directed to you, Signe. So did you manage to get traceability on all materials used in your products? I assume that you would also be dependent on raw materials mined, for example, in China, where it's more challenging to get full transparency.
We have non-materials from China, and that's also a strategic choice in sort of compliance and get data. So, for example, we used to have one material from China, and I chose to substitute it with a material from Portugal. It's a little bit more expensive. It costs me maybe 3 or 4 cents more for the material per kilo. But I don't have the transport cost that's so high. I don't need to engage in the high volume. So I am more flexible with my volumes. And that gives actually, when we figured this out, it was both the supplier of this material, it was in our insole, and it's also for us. And it's actually been a help to find. We had to search. I did a search job together with them to find this supply in Portugal. So it can also open up opportunities that you actually see, oh, this is really difficult to be compliant because we simply can't get the data set. Now, I know some Chinese companies will give you a data set, but it's also sometimes difficult to trust, because if you've been to China or some other Asian countries, their regulations are different, and how they control it is different. So then we have made strategic choices of using the time to find an alternative material and change it.
Yeah. So through the value chain transparency of knowing this specific item or specific part of the product is coming from this supplier in China, you were able to just take that small part of the whole process and move it to Portugal. So it's easier for you to make these small changes and more strategic or better informed decisions along the value chain instead of moving the entire thing.
Yes, it helps us, even if it's just a component out of 35, it helps us make better decisions. And it's also given an opportunity to know a new supplier and, that I can actually visit, because Portugal is not so far away.
We also have a question saying, did you use a specific tool to gather the data to be systematic?
Well, we use the tool within the cradle-to-cradle certification. So there is a whole tool to use that we have been using inside of how to collect data. And that's also the tool we use now. So we have this as a base tool, and that's also how we do our continuous compliance. So that's also what has been helpful with the certification.
And then we have someone saying, I have a service company and I want to be 100% eco-friendly for paint and cleaning. Where can I get information about supplier? So my advice would be similar to what you did. Go to the first supplier from where you buy your products today, and then ask them to go to their supplier, so you get the full chain of your the full value chain of your paint or your cleaning supplies. It is a difficult journey, and I don't know how big your service company is, but it is something that takes time, and as you said, it is not just something that you can come and enforce over time. It just takes time, especially if you are a smaller business. But it is something that, as I assume, is why you're asking this, is to be a differentiator regarding the products that you use in your service company. So I think that is it for the questions. So basically, to round this up, Signe, you have done this the way that I would actually advise someone to do it. So flip it around, do it from a business value or driver perspective, saying we want to make this butterfly effect in the market, and we don't care if it costs a little bit more. We don't care if we have to change something or visit various suppliers, because you want to show your customers this is how our shoes are built, and you want to ensure that when you say something is certified leather or something is cradle to cradle certified, you want to be able to prove that and provide that information. Yeah. So we don't have to just trust you.
Exactly. There's a third party verifying it. And I think it's also about taking choices. So how do you take the right choice? It's very complex. So you need help on that. Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise, I think we'll just round off from here. Thank you very much for joining us, Signe.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me afterwards. You are more than welcome. Otherwise, we just want to wish you a happy day.
Yeah, very happy day.